Have you been to a store lately? You've probably seen the prices going up and up and up. And while there are people in Washington, D.C. and capitals around the world and financial centers telling you the worst is already behind us, after 6 months, 10 months, 12 months of that, yet the prices keep going up. You have to provide for your family, and it is getting more and more painful to do that. Inflation is hitting everyone really hard. Now, there's been a fringe element out there called preppers, people who are getting prepared for hard times ahead, and they're not so fringe anymore. There's a lot more people getting involved in talking about canning foods, talking about providing foods for yourself, becoming more self-sufficient. Those of homesteaders and those who are focused on self-sufficiency and heavy gardening, that has gone from a warm, fuzzy topic to one where a lot of people are starting to ask a lot more questions, and perhaps you are one of them. In this video, I want to unfold to you kind of some of the thoughts of how preppers and, self-sufficiency people are looking at things and how they are moving to combat inflation and to inflation-proof their life. Self-sufficiency is not just about living in the woods or something like that, but rather it's being able to control where your food comes from, where your energy comes from, where the things that you need come from so that you're not dependent upon some corporation halfway around the world who's manufacturing things and shutting down their factories whenever they feel like, for whatever reason, and shipping all that product all the way around the world. It's not just an efficiency thing, it's also a dependability thing. And we've really realized that in the last several years that the system is not as stable as we were told or led to believe. We realize that these corporations that have been trying to cut every penny out of their supply chain that they can, that not only are there human costs to Americans or wherever you are, first world countries losing their jobs to third world countries, but rather it's also the fact that shipping something all the way around the world has its own inefficiencies and it has its own drawbacks. So we're going to walk through how preppers and self-sufficiency people are not being hit nearly so hard by these inflation numbers that we're seeing out there, and how you can protect yourself and your family as well. So let's jump into it. First, let's talk about what inflation is, just so we can clear on what we're talking about. It's the rising of prices due to there being more money than there are supplies. As factories shut down, as the entire world shut down, and yet at the same time, governments around the world injected a tremendous amount of money into the system. So there were more dollars, more euros, more Canadian dollars, Australian dollars. There were more dollars of everything out there, and yet there was less stuff to buy. Inevitably, the price of the stuff would have to go up because everybody wants to buy. At first, it showed up in shortages. Everyone went to the store to buy toilet paper, and it didn't work. There wasn't enough toilet paper. There's plenty of money for toilet paper, but there just wasn't toilet paper. After a while, the prices of toilet paper went up, and people stopped buying quite so much toilet paper. A lot going on with that one. But anyway, so we then saw shortages hit other areas where oftentimes it was manufacturing factories were shut down. Sometimes because they didn't have parts, sometimes because they were told by the government to shut down. Sometimes they just didn't have the resources, the inputs to put into the factory, whether it was labor or whether it was raw materials or whether energy. They didn't have the things to keep the factory running, and so they had to shut down. Again, supply of goods has dropped and dropped, whereas banks and everyone out there has been printing money out the wazoo. Now, Not much of that money ended up in your pocket or my pocket, but some of it did. If you're in the United States, we got several rounds of stimulus checks. And many economists and people out there were saying you can't just print money out of thin air and give it to people without actually having work involved. Because all you're going to do is just create the inflation. You're going to cause the price of everything to go up. So the next question, which is more important, is this going to stop anytime soon? So we just got print from the U.S. federal government saying it is now running at 9.1% per year. So what cost you $100 last year should cost you, on average, $109.10. That means your money has lost its value. Now, when we start talking about food prices, we're talking 20+% over the last year. Prices on food have been going up much faster for a variety of reasons, shortages here, shortages there of things. But the question is, will this all stop? Economists have said that basically in order for the money pile to equate the stuff pile of supplies, we will have to suffer another 40% inflation. Basically, it would have to go up to 150% to the previous 100%, and that would equate things. Now, we've already gone up supposedly 9.1%, so that means we should have another 41% inflation in order to get us up to parity. Now, that's assuming they don't print any more money. If they print more money, then we're going to have more problems. If we have more factories shut down, if we have farms lose their crops, and we have a lot of that going on out there too. So the question is, how much further can this go? Economists are saying in this round, before we start having second-order effects, we could have an additional 40% increase in costs in the near future, possibly in the next year, as this thing just spirals out of control. I've heard from many managers of factories and companies out there and reports saying basically that they've taken hits to their earnings in order to keep the price down on things. And they're saying that they're not going to keep doing that anymore because they have to make a profit. They have to look after their businesses, which means they're going to have to jack prices up more. There's another wave of food price increases coming down the pike. I was just talking to someone who is in finance with a salad dressing company, and they also do other things. To protect their identity, I won't say what company that is, but they said that there is another, I believe there's a 12% increase that's going to be coming into effect in about a month. Big increases hitting one after the next, and that is across the board with so many of these products out there. So that's the problem. Inflation is going to keep rolling for at least a while longer. How do you protect yourself? There's two kind of approaches here. The first approach is for you to stock up. If things are going to be more expensive in the future, then buy them now. And that's where the prepper side of things is. Well, we'll buy food now. Canned goods last much longer than their best buy date. You can basically get a can of whatever, and in most cases, as long as the can doesn't, melt because of rust, you can basically consider the food in there safe to eat. Now, it may not be as delicious as it would be if you ate it by the best by date, but it will still be nutritious, and it will still be safe to eat. It will not grow stuff in there. So if you're worried about botulism or other things, if it's a commercially canned product, as long as the seal is not broken, you're safe to eat that. So you can stock up on more canned goods. So just yesterday, I went to Aldi and I got a whole bunch of canned goods. Why? Because I know those canned goods are going to cost more next month, next year. I was going to pick up a pack of bagels. Here, they've always been, like around $1, and then they went up to $1.29, and then they went up recently to $1.49, which I thought was a little too much. But I was going to bite the bullet and buy $1.49 and saw that the price had gone up to $1.99. So $2 for a roll of bagels at a discount store, and I said, enough's enough. No, I won't do that. But canned goods are spiraling upwards in price as well. And honestly, when you look at Walmart and such, the shelves are getting more and more sparse out there. We're not seeing as much product out there. The canned good manufacturers are not being able to keep up with the demand for canned goods, which means the price is going to continue to rise. A lot out there, so stocking up. The other option there is to localize. Now, we've spent many years globalizing so that you get applesauce from apples that were grown in the United States, shipped to China, and then they processed them there, and then they shipped them back as applesauce, which some of you might say that doesn't sound very efficient, and it kind of isn't. But that was the globalization. You know, it's cheaper for us to process those apples in China, even with the shipping, so let's do that. Well, friends, you need to localize your supply chain, because things that are shipped across the ocean and back again, that is very susceptible to being disrupted. And you go to the store and it's not there. That's why we see most of the disruptions hitting big box stores like Walmart and these other stores that particularly import tons of their stuff. Places that are selling local goods, we're not seeing nearly as much disruption there. If they sell local farmers' goods, if they sell vegetables and fruits and everything like that that are actually canned and processed here in the United States, they're not seeing nearly as much disruption. It's amazing. So you need to localize. Where are places where you can buy directly from farmers in your area, farmers markets, and connect up with growers? Because when you know where the food is coming from, it's much easier for the food to get from there to your plate and not have to travel halfway around the world. And the ultimate localization is if you go out your door and there's the food in your garden. And that's what we talk a lot about here, is learning how to garden and grow and raise your own food, and supplement that with stocking up on food. The simple fact is, if you consider how much it costs to buy food in the store, even canned goods and such like that, as opposed to raising it yourself or growing it yourself in your garden, well, let's just say, which is cheaper when it comes to time? Absolutely, buying it from the store is a miracle of modern engineering. You can get a whole flat of canned corn, but when you try to grow that same amount of corn out in your yard, it's a lot of work. You have to do a lot of prep work. You got to really watch after it. And I'm not saying that's not worth doing. I'm just saying that sometimes your garden is going to not produce, and you're going to need a stockpile of food. Sometimes your farmer friend is not going to be able to provide you the food that you need, and you need to have a stockpile to fall back on. How to prepare and how to take care of your family as inflation gets out of control, how to inflation-proof. You really need to have a deep pantry. We need to go back to the idea of having enough food to kind of get through the winter that your grandma used to have. Houses used to have deep pantries. Getting wire racks and stocking up with just the stuff that you're already buying already, just buy more of it now, knowing it's going to be more expensive in the future. That will make you more self-sufficient. That will make you more stable. As prices go up, you can say, no, that's too much. We have enough food that we can make some choices here. So stock up. Build an extra pantry. If your pantry and your cupboards in your kitchen are not big enough to put up, 3-4 months of food, then invest in getting some wire racks from Amazon or Walmart or wherever you get them from, garage sales, and start putting up canned goods. That's the cheapest, easiest way to go. If you want to go long term, get 5-gallon buckets, put some Mylar bags in them, dump rice in there. If you don't want to do the Mylar and that sounds too complicated, get 5-gallon buckets and then just put the 20-pound bags from Walmart of rice in there with an 8-pound bag or 2 4-pound bags or whatever of pinto beans in there, and seal that up. Will it last quite as long as the Mylar bags? No, it won't. But you know what? You're probably still good for at least 15 years in that fashion. If you want to get a little fancier, throw some oxygen absorbers in there. But if you want to get real long life out of it, you want to put some Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers. And there's plenty of videos out there that'll show you how to do that simply, show you where to buy that kind of stuff. Rice and beans is the cheapest way to go, that's for sure. And it's one of the most nutritious ways to go too. It can be tasty if you season it right. How can you inflation-proof your family? Get that garden going. It's not too late, even this time of year in the Northern Hemisphere. You can still get a garden in and start growing some lettuces, which is getting super expensive at the store, if you know what I mean. You might even be able to sneak in some green beans, and you might even be able to get some squash in the ground still and get some, depending on what weather zone you're in. But get your garden in the ground. Think about possibility getting some chickens. Or if you have more stomach for it, you can get into some things like quail or rabbits, meat rabbits. So those are some options there. Or build a relationship with someone who is producing their own food and producing enough food for people around them. Having that relationship with that local farmer really will put you to the front of the list when times get tough. Some things to think about. Localize, and also make sure that you're stocking up, because things are cheaper today than they will be tomorrow. If you say, I don't have the money to do that, take a hard look at what kind of food you're buying, because I bet you if you bought rice and beans, you would absolutely have enough money to not just feed yourself for today, but stockpile up a lot. Stewed tomatoes. You can season with garlic. You can season with, there's lots of salt seasonings that you can put in there. I love putting chicken bouillon in there. There's lots of things you can do to spice up rice. You can put some beef stew on top of rice. That's one thing I love doing. There's just so many different things you can do with rice. If it's not one part of your diet, that's one way you can really press the price of things down. Get more rice and beans into your diet. Learn how to cook them. Use a pressure cooker, and you can actually drive the price significantly lower on your grocery bill all the time. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you like this video, you might want to check out this video right here. Otherwise, I will see you later. Steve Poplar, out.